Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special Iberian Horse Alliance webinar. Tonight, we are delighted to welcome Laura Harper, an accomplished documentary filmmaker and dedicated Iberian horse researcher. Laura's award-winning film, Mustang of the Caracas Mesa, also known as Rambo of the Caracas Mesa, offers a powerful and deeply personal exploration of New Mexico's wild Mustangs, their rich history, and their surprising genetic connections to Iberian breeds. Through her filmmaking and ongoing DNA research, Laura brings us intimate stories of equine heritage, including the Galiceno breed and its ancient links to the horses that shaped the Americas. Her work beautifully bridges personal experience, history, genetics, and conservation, helping to illuminate the enduring legacy of Iberian horses far beyond the peninsula. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Laura Harper.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me on. Hi, Bruce and Lisa. For this webinar, I will be discussing a bit of Iberian history, the Iberian DNA found in the New Mexico San Juan Basin Mustang, and the Iberian Garrano Galiceno connection. So I'm happy to answer questions following each section of this lecture and at the conclusion as well. I'd first like to begin by recognizing and appreciating the work of Dr. J. Kirkpatrick in his wildlife fertility control, Dr. E. Gus Cothran in equine genetics, Sarah Annan in equine history, and Edelon in equine genetics. Their research has really helped me to appreciate the Iberian in the Mustangs. I want to do a little disclaimer here. My MA is in administration, not equine genetics, and the research I am presenting today has not been peer-reviewed, but every aha along the journey into the Iberian breed in our Mustang is a new journey. So I'd like to take us maybe to the year 700 to about 1500. I think that was the best place for me to begin my journey. So let's go. In 711, as we know, the Moors invaded then Hispania, renaming it El Andalus. After the 15th century, 1492, became the Christian reconquest, and Al-Andalus became Spain. So it is, in my opinion, during those 800 years of cultural mixing of humanity, where then was delivered the Spanish-breeded Genet to North America. And I reasoned that the forebears of the Mustang are the Arabian from the Arabian Peninsula, the Berber of North America, Alsace Mountains, and the Central Asian Celtic Turkoman. So the movements of humans and their breeding needs support this theory. And I document this in my film documentary, Mustang of the Caracas Mesa documentary. By the 16th century, we now have a new land race breed of horses we refer to now as the New World breeds. And they originated in South America and on upward into the United States and North America on up to Alaska. For me, the Genet bridges the gap between the old world Spanish bar Berber, the Criollo, the Garrano, and the European draft horses, and the new world gaited horses like the Pasos and the American tribal horses such as the Pintado, known as the Pinto. So in my research and looking at this, I conclude, and I talk about this because it has to be discussed in my opinion. I include the Turkoman because of its influence on the whole world stage, specifically the breeding variation by the Central Asian tribes, resulting in the 17th century thoroughbred. That cannot be ignored. And I talk about this toward the conclusion of this webinar, when I will share my Jicarilla Mustang Rambo's DNA and compare it to the iconic Cabresto of the Jicarilla Carson Ranger District and 3 other Jicarilla horses, all born decades apart. In fact, I conclude in all of this DNA mix that there are bands of Mustangs whose breeding foundation is comparable to that of the thoroughbred. And, the thoroughbred that is derived from the Turkoman, the Caspian, the Celtic, and variation breeds of antiquity in Turkmenistan. So is there any questions on any of those allegations I've just made? Okay, I'll pick back up with the Jeanette. Is that all right with you? So by the 16th century, we now have a new land race, and that's a breed, of course, is referred to as the New World breeds, and they originate in South America and on upward. For me, the Jeanette bridges the gap between the Old World Spanish, the Barb, the Berber, the Criollo, Garrano, and the European heavy horses, and then bridges that gap between the Old World and the New World gaited horses, and the American tribal horses and that of the Pinto. So we were talking about the Turkoman, and I include the Turkoman because of the influence on the world stage, specifically the breeding variations by Central Asian tribes resulting in the 17th century thoroughbred. I'll talk about this toward the conclusion of this webinar, but when I share the Hickory Mustang Rambo's DNA and compare it to the iconic Cabresto of their Hickory Carson Ranger District and 3 other Hickory horses, all born decades apart. In fact, I conclude in all of this DNA mix that there are bands of the Mustangs whose breeding foundation is comparable to that of the thoroughbred derived from the Turkoman, a Celtic variation breeds of antiquity, Turkmenistan. So are there any questions regarding that prehistory of Iberian to the New World? On today's map, we'll head north and imagine that you're in this basin called the San Juan Basin. And the San Juan Basin, you head north from Grants, New Mexico to Durango, east to Cuba, where the Albuquerque area is, and west to Gallup. And that borders New Mexico and Arizona. And you will find yourself in the San Juan Basin. The San Juan Basin is a geological earth formation ranging from about 6,000 to 8,000 feet. And why that is important is this makes it sense that the Old World Iberian horses would naturally survive in our area in the San Juan Basin habitat. The Southwest mimics the hot, dry, and the wet, cold winter patterns of Spain. So between 2020 and 2026, DNA samples of the Jicarilla, Rio Arriba, San Juan, and McKinley counties of northern New Mexico Mustangs were collected and correlated by Debbie Coburn, Barb Kipper, Sarah Annan, and me. The DNA samples were then sent to Texas A&M. In this study, the 17th to the 20th century feral horse breeds turned out by ranchers and other horse owners were not showing up as a primary marker on the profiles. We found that quite interesting. In fact, of the 27 horses that we DNA tested with Texas A&M, only one, Romeo, profiled 19th century saddlebred as a primary marker. The other 26 showed either Old World Iberian or New World gaited. One conclusion might be that the later domestic breeds post 16th century did not survive 100, 200, much less 500 years in the San Juan Basin without human intervention into their welfare. So interesting, though, the influence of the Morgan breed showing up in the secondary markers, and this correlates to a homesteader stories of our Largo Canyon circa about 1932 and 1947, and also documented in my film. So of the 27 samples, 13 profiled Garrano Galiceno, 10 profiled landrace, New World gaited South American breeds, and 3 European draft ponies, referred to as the European heavy horse. Our sample correlated with the major groups reported in Dr. Cothran's 2013 study of 40 horses in the Jicarilla Carson National Forest. And on that, I'll give you some data we have. Let me read from that study back in 2013 that correlates with our 2026 results. In the study, it says overall similarity of the Hickory HMA herd to domestic breeds was somewhat low. Highest mean genetic similarity of the Hickory herd was with the Old World Iberian breeds, followed by the New World Iberian breeds, and the light racing and riding breeds. So that correlated to exactly the study of 27 horses that we did, and we thought that was pretty amazing. So anyway, going further, to identify the Iberian San Juan Basin Mustang, we should consider the horse conformation, the DNA, and the habitat, which we now call the land race. It's here that the ahas began for me because of the DNA results of the Texas A&M were correlating with the DNA results of the etalon genetics testing. So I have a photo here. I don't know, is that being seen? This is a photo of two horses, Rambo and Elroy. Here is also a photo of Cabresto, Rambo, and a Galiceño. But the most telling thing is that the DNA of 4 horses of the Hickory Carson National Forest were collected, and who lived in the, we have the Mustang Rambo, Sarah Annan's Mustang Stallion Elroy, Cabresto, who lived wild in the forest for an estimated 30 years, and since has passed in 2025. He is shown here in the photo with paint, still wild in the forest. So each horse was approximately a decade apart generationally. Their samples taken by random happenstance and were a common ancestry match for Garrano and Galiceño with both Texas A&M and etalon. So it was quite amazing for us to find that these horses, there's 4 of them, having the same data. So what I then did is I wanted to compare Rambo to a Galiceño. I then contacted Galiceño of the Suwannee in Florida to inquire about registering Rambo as a Galiceño. Rambo did not qualify, but he would be considered as an appendix to its registry. So where things did qualify and did not qualify were explained in this photo. Here we do not have the narrow chest in Rambo. In fact, that Galiceño of the Suwannee were about 12 to 13.2 hands. And their ears and the muzzle and the shape of the legs of Rambo and a Galiceño of the Suwannee matched, except that Rambo is 14.1 hands tall, and that did not qualify him. I think that the reason why the Galiceño chest is so much smaller than that of Rambo's is probably because of the adaptation to the tropical environment. A guess might be that the bone structure may be defined to a cool place or better cooled in humidity. So the history of the Galiceño or the Suwannee is the same history of Rambo's. He has the wider chest. He's 14.1 hands tall, square, and his chestnuts don't appear like the Galiceño, and his chest is much larger than their chest. So that might be the arid Southwest. He's got these pads also that show up on the square horses that show perhaps their need to be in the wet, cold, dry winters to help them insulate. So we're finding that the Garrano, the Lusitano, and the Soraya Mustang is common to the Western states and is the connection to the northern Spain and Portugal, Galicia, on the world map horses. And according to Sarah Annan, Rambo and Elroy have that deep body, compact, close coupled conformation that were special to the Mustang that makes them a better fit for a 15th century conquistador square horse armor. This fascinating point is a story for a webinar probably in itself. But anyway, we get back to Cabresto. He is now a celebrity horse, and this is this fellow here, for Etalon. And the horses that have affinity to him are generally showing 75% Old World Iberian European heavy horse and New World South America landrace DNA, according to its regions and to its natural habitat. So we can now get to some data about who Cabresto and Rambo and these horses are. When we look at Cabresto with the Texas A&M report, we find that he is a Galiceño, a Morgan, and a Halflinger. The Etalon report shows 37% heavy horse and on going down into the thoroughbred and the Iberian and carriage horse. So when I look at the breakdown of Cabresto as a founding stock horse, I am reminded of the Turkoman. So when you look at the breakdown of Cabresto, he's got like 5% of these different horses, the Phil, the Clydesdale, the Belgiums, the Passos, they're all like 5 or 7%. And then the breeding variations is just amazing. When I look at the breakdown of his founding stock, I'm reminded of the Turkoman and its different breeding variations by the different tribes who created the Caspian and the Celtic. And breeded horses had to be flown into the cars and produce Cabresto, or he authentically retained the common ancestry. Cothran's report provided this in 2013 as well for my film, The Spanish Horse Breed of 1492 didn't exist in Spain anymore. So let's now go to talk a little bit about some pause for discussion. In the Texas A&M report, Rambo showed a secondary affinity to an early 20th century cream draft horse. Why would Rambo show of Ohio in the Texas A&M profile? Interestingly, the Etalon report showed Rambo to be 13% Belgium draft. So you can see there's a question there. Now, a San Juan Basin Mustang named Drifter, he's here. His profile showed a secondary affinity to a late 20th century Selle Le Française. And would Drifter show affinity to a late 19th century riding horse of Normandy, France? Why would that be in the Texas A&M profile? One of my conclusions is rooted in discussions with the experts that laid the foundation for us to take this research on our Mustangs to the next level. Two ideas came to mind. One is history. What was the impact of shipping 1.5 million horses to World War I Europe on horse DNA? Did our North American Mustang influence European breeding? And number two, what is the impact of Old World common ancestry as founding stock to identify the Mustang and other North American horses? Those were questions that came to mind. The Etalon profile for Rambo revealed Rambo to be 13% Belgium, consistent with the Texas A&M typing him as a draft marker with roots of the Belgian draft halflingers. So that made sense to me. It also was interesting that this rare, made me look at this rare domestic draft from Ohio officially listed as an endangered, given their critical status of only having 500 for their breeding. It made me to imagine what would the status of a herd of Mustangs might be at less than 106 at HMA. It is not sustainable for a healthy landrace breed. So to restore the cream draft breed in 1982, the Livestock Conservancy began including blood typing into their program and to restore the breed. So the conclusions to me are that the horses by the photos and they're different. Excuse me, I had a little hiccup there. By their photos, they're having the Garrano, the Soraya, and the various groups in them. Their history and conformation show that their DNA is so much more consistent than any other horse breed that you will find often. So I did have some photos of some of these horses to show you the linkage of their body types. And here you have one that is the Prior Mountains, and that's London. And you can see that square horse breed. This is Drifter, which is found in the San Juan Basin with that similar horse type. And then we have Cabresto. And these two. So you have their body types pretty consistent with their genetics and the influence of the Iberian breeds. Is there any feedback from any of this to discuss before going further? Okay. These wild horse breeds they breed as nature intended to them, as nature intended them, and they do it as they did in antiquity. And look at the consistency in the Mustang square horse conformation in the western southwestern states. The study of Iberian influence, the San Juan Basin Mustang, is showing how important it is that we keep them as healthy as possible for further study. My favorite quote from Dr. Cothran, made in 2020, before the DNA explosion started, he said, "Who knows what science will uncover in these Mustangs?" That alone for me speaks volumes. And so that concludes some of the questions I might like posed to me.
Comments that I've been reading.
Thank you.
So have you concluded everything that you've wanted to discover, or are you still exploring?
Well, we're still exploring, and I think what we want to provide is enough evidence that the horses in our area in the San Juan Basin are indigenous and according to the habitat, and that the point of all of this is that they'll be preserved and considered that important. It's important that their genetic makeup is preserved throughout into the future. We have horses that are 75% Iberian, and if you group, you're going to find that same percentage.
Well, like Lisa's pointed out very often, when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's very clear, that body type, and it's very clearly Iberian. So it's great that you guys are documenting that, because I think it's valuable information to preserve them. It really is. It's fascinating.
Audrey has a Audrey has a question, Susan. Can you see that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, can you read it? Audrey's asking about the San Juan Basin Mustangs. And the other thing, Laura, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the deeper dive that Edelon does versus Texas and A&M. And since we got you involved with Edelon, how much more we're learning.
So do you see Audrey's question?
That deep dive.
Sorry, go ahead.
Two things I'm going to get to Lisa's question and about Edelon, and also what the Placida's question was what was the similarity between the San Juan Basin horses and the Placida horses. I think all of our New Mexico horses, they came up as a land race, and their breasts, their chests are real thick. And you can see that they're of the Garrano nature. So I don't know if the Placida's horses are generally the same makeup as the San Juan Basin, but I would imagine so because northern New Mexico, they're all New Mexico horses. And then getting back to what Lisa has said is, when we talk about the Turkoman and that authentic breed, that's what kind of led me to that pathway of seeing how. So what happened is you take Edelon, you take Texas A&M, and they have three markers. Your first marker is going to be primarily what the horse's main genetic breed is, and it correlates with Edelon. And then Edelon takes that deeper dive into finding out the percentages of all that Cabresto has 5% fill, a 4% Clydesdale, and 9% Franchise Montaigne, and 18% Belgium. So it takes that down into 7% Paso. So when you get all those small percentages, you find out you've got some kind of a really authentic, well-bred Iberian blooded horse. And so Edelon doing that for me was incredible in this study. This is of Texas A&M, and the 27 we researched, and then finding out that it's all correlated by Edelon. I recall, saying that either we had to fly over a Spanish barb into the Carson National Forest, or we had to, bring all those little breeds in to create Cabresto. So that was very amazing to us in our study, and we have to continue it. And the area is quite large. We're going from down to Grants, New Mexico, up to Durango, Colorado, and the San Juan Basin heads over to Albuquerque. So it's just a border. I'm sure that those Placida horses are very similar to the San Juan Basin horses.
Got another
and then
question
the greatest aha was to find the.
Can you see the questions on the side?
And I'm not reading it. Are the San Juan Basin horses managed? Oh, okay. I just missed it. These percentages and types are really. Oh, the question goes away before I can read it.
The percentages and types.
Can someone read it to me?
I am. Hang on. These percentages and types are really similar to her results from Edelon on her Marsh Tacky horse, Mystic. And then Audrey wanted to know if the San Juan Basin horses are managed by the BLM, or would it be Forest Service or reservation horses? Because that's another thing maybe you can mention, that it's not only BLM in that Four Corners region.
Yeah, we have an interesting paradigm here in northern New Mexico and in New Mexico at large. The BLM, of course, owns the horses. but they're managed by the Forest Service in the Carson. And then the off-range horses are those reservation horses. And like Drifter, and I didn't know if I shared the DNA of Drifter, but his DNA was, let's see, let's find Drifter here in his DNA. His DNA was completely Garrano, Galiceño, and Iberian heavy horse. And again, you know, the idea that horses were just turned out, and that creates feral horses. The biggest aha was to find that we weren't showing up with these turned out ranch horses. They weren't surviving to be the number one in the markers, either in Etalon or in Texas A&M. But Drifter was a Garrano. Paint came out, a Peruvian Pasofino. And again, they have that same genetic profile in their conformation. And I don't know how, you know, I have two AQHA horses, and their body types are completely different from one another's, according to what they were bred for. I you know, my one quarter horse looks like a thoroughbred, and then the other quarter horse looks like a beefy cow pony. And then you get Rambo, and his body type matches not only a reservation horse named Drifter, who's a Garrano, but then he matches also a little book clips horse named Assad. And then also, here's Assad. And then his body type matches the famous London of the Prior Mountains. So that reveals to me that you have got a really good breeding foundation.
You did. Okay.
I'm dropping a YouTube clip into the chat. So Laura, you can open your chat on the side window. I don't know if you know how to, oh, you're on your phone, so don't even try to do that. That's why it is coming up. But if anybody wants to copy that YouTube clip, it's a video just talking about what Laura was just mentioning about the quarter horses being so different. It basically talks about what is a quarter horse, because they've totally lost their way. But it's a very, very good video. This gal puts out a wonderful series, video series.
And that is, you know, one of the points I was hoping to really drive home in is that you could take that random horses like Rambo or Cabresto and find that they have the genetic diversity in those Iberian different breeds, those small little breeds, like, you know, you could have a small little Caspian or a small little Celtic, all these different tribal DNA breeding, you know, to create the Turkoman Celtic that becomes a thoroughbred. So in that reasoning, I think you could probably have a good argument that Cabresto is very much close to that scale of breeding in his Iberian roots.
First saw Laura's documentary, what blew me away and why this has expanded to what it is if we can present to the scientific community the importance of these genetic lines, they stop subdivisions. If there's a spotted toad somewhere building highways around a toad, but we have these genetics happening with these wild horses that they're just willing to like wipe them out because they keep saying that they're invasive. And if we can take it to the next level and make enough noise and talk about it enough and educate enough and work with people like Laura and Edelon, then we have the science. And with the science, maybe that's the way to save the horses. Just my 2 cents. So Laura, I'm sorry, there's the question.
Yeah, so to go back to the question is what is the devastation? The cream draft point, and I harped on that with Rambo and finding out that the cream draft really was the Belgium draft. That was the aha. But what's going to happen is you're going to mess up the heterozygosity of the horses and their genomic breeding value as well. So what's happening in the Forest Service, or the BLM, is they call down these herds under 160. If 500 horses, it's going to be a hard time to save the rare cream draft. What is the result going to be when all you have is 160 or 50 horses in which to continue a breed line? What you're going to get is a high rate of inbreeding and mess up also your genomic breeding as well. That is, I think, the thing I learned most about this and why it's so important that the bands, even when you do bait trapping, you're going to not take a whole band away off. I didn't want helicopter roundups, but if you replace it with all this small bait trapping, you're taking the whole bands out. And so that's pretty concerning as well in the area of ruining the heterozygosity values and the genomic breeding values. I think that's the biggest worry I have, as well as, all of the other things that go along with the inhumanity of it.
So Lisa, you had caused
And it's really amazing if you got.
Sorry, what does zeroing out HMA mean?
It means they're taking all of the horses out of that area.
One of the concerns I think that is most alarming is we don't know how many we don't know the number. I question 80,000 horses. There's other people that don't believe there's that many. And I don't know how you get to a number and you understand the current situation when I don't know how the number is being calculated, either in any of the HMAs. How is that 80,000 coming, to be the example? So if you think you have 400 horses and you really have 200 horses, you're in trouble in that small area and patch where those horses are trying to survive in their breeding values. And the breeding value isn't that they can't have another horse, it's that you get to the inbreeding, and so you don't have these strong, healthy horses. Horses being indigenous to different regions. So if you look at the San Juan Basin horses, you're seeing a predominance of those Garranos and Galiceños, and then they are so compatible with the habitat. And then you go right up to the Little Book Cliffs, and you'll probably find there's Sorayas in that group that have well adjusted to the salt in that area. So these horses are able to survive in their habitats. And it's showing over and over again, I think, that it's not turned out horses that are feral from loosed ranch horses, but the ones that are surviving are these Iberian horses. We are very fortunate in Forest Service. I have to say that, and they work well with the county regarding the needs of those horses in as much as they are able to do. But Bruce, did you have a question?
Well, I was just trying to figure out what part of the government is a BLM under? Is it the Department of Interior or what? And
Yes,
why?
yes.
So if you have all these horses that are coastal horses, like the ones in North Carolina, I forgot the name of them, but they're down in Beaumont, North Carolina, and places like that, and the Chincoteague ponies and stuff like that. And they're organized and kept because of small organizations take care of them, and they've been around for hundreds of years too. So is it because there's just too many Mustangs that they just can't take care of all of them? I mean, what the hell is the government doing? First runs the ones in North Carolina over in Beaumont. I read about that the other day. And the ones down in Chincoteague, they're ran by the fire department. They take care of that with local money coming in, and they've been running that program for years, and they,
100 years.
the round up and bring them all across the canal and have a little auction.
Well, the Assateague,
But they don't kill them. They don't send them out on meat trucks. They don't.
the Assateague, and next door, the Assateague are taken care of by the Conservancy. So I think Conservancy is a part of the answer to the equation. Is those need to be they need to be created in our different areas, and then preserve those indigenous horses that are existing and surviving in the different habitats in the Western states.
Well,
I just think it's very interesting too when you talk about horses from these. Okay, I'll just say this really quick. Is that you'll have Cabresto Rambo, whose chest is now robust for arid climate. And then you have a Swanee Galiceño, whose chest now is narrow for a more tropical climate. I just think that's fascinating, and it just shows how hardy these Iberian blooded horses are.
yeah,
And important too, I think, all horses. All of them. So.
I also believe that because of the smaller herds, the ones on the coast that are being taken care of, people who actually care about the being of the horse, and not the government, who probably doesn't know anything about a horse and doesn't care about them because it's costing them money. But that's our money. We should have a say in that, shouldn't we? Yes, but you're dealing with a government. But the smaller herds are being taken care of a lot better.
Bruce, when you go back to the act from 1971, the act of Congress that gave Congress the law that they must manage these horses, not allow them to be rounded up and sent to slaughter like they were, the dog food factories and all of that. And it comes down to 50 years. It's been over 50 years now, and they didn't make it better. They've made it worse.
So
They made it a lot worse.
So the government needs a talking to.
Well, good luck with that.
You need a coalition, yeah, to write letters and stuff. But I'm getting ready to actually get into Beaufront and take some pictures of some of those pictures of those horses on islands out there. I'm going to rent a boat and go out and go see them, because that's pretty much where it'll be real nice to do. So I'm getting ready to do that, because I've seen them before, and they're a nice little herd out there.
Right. The other interesting thing are the Sable Island wild horses, which is an isolated herd off of Nova Scotia, the Sable Island horses, which have not had any management or any human intervention for 400 years.
Wow.
And they're not overrunning the island. They're not underrunning the island. They have managed themselves. There are no predators on that island. The herd stays managed. That is a totally interesting study, is the Sable Island wild horses.
And they take care of themselves?
Yes.
Pretty much? Wow.
Yes, totally.
How big of an island? How big is a herd?
There's a couple of hundred horses on that island. Until about 20 years ago, no humans were even allowed on that island. And they've allowed some photographers. Roberto Descato, who was one of our Equus photographers, and we used to hold the film festival party in his gallery in New York.
Right.
He's done beautiful studies of the Sable Island horses. Kind of like how we got introduced to Laura with her documentary and her study on the horse Rambo.
Right. Right.
So
regarding, and I kind of keep, that takes me back to, I just want to make sure, Cabresto, he lived in the wild 30 years. And he died a wild horse, and he's iconic. And the Forest Service did a great job. You know, I just have to say kudos to our district. And it wasn't until Cabresto, it was two days later after his passing, that I was notified, and I hiked in to acquire his DNA, but without the cooperation and wonderful relationship with our specific Forest Service, that couldn't have happened. And so it's like you said, it's that personal relationship and the community getting involved that I think will help these horses be appreciated more. Yeah.
So-
Here's a famous photo. And I would like to share this with you because it shows, Cabresto is a Galiceño Garrano. And so I'm going to show you a photo of Garrano that, you could get from Wikipedia. And you'll see the similarity and the differences. Again, that I was trying to make my case with Rambo and the Galiceño of the Swanee. So the Mustangs seem like they just get that southwestern robust chest, but you look at the legs and you'll see that the legs are from the knee down are very similar. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing. So many things come to mind when you're trying to consider all this. And those horses out on the reservation, they are just as hardy and showing the same kind of bloodline as the horses in the forest. But to the point, I think in thinking about what we have talked about today, what's really come to my heart is to understand how important it is that you keep that breed line of all those pristine breeds of the Iberians, but that you make sure that there's enough horses so the heterozygosity does not get too high, that you have inbreeding and you start destroying and they start getting different type of problems. And that's the same thing as with the genomic breeding. Those are the three criteria, I think, probably that our managers could start looking at with these horses. They're going to do with them all. I don't think there's that many. And I think that the amount, might be 40,000 or maybe half that. I don't know. I just see every time I see a number, it's always an inflated number. And with careful management and fertility control and using mechanisms and structures like, Rockhart's hub, I don't know, or wildlife management hubs, so that these horses are used, they're controlled better with fertility control and some of those answers. But again, I think they can be managed in the wild and the roundups are not doing any good. And then my last point was from what I learned from Dr. Gus Cothran, Kirkpatrick, Dr. J. Kirkpatrick. is that when you take a whole bunch of horses off, they're like coyotes, you create compensatory reproduction and you make the problem worse. So some of those ideas could be the answer to the future of our Iberian bred horses. Right. So thank you for, those three ahas, and the fourth one with compensatory reproduction. Taking them all off the land is not an answer to the ecosystem.
Right. Right.
Are there any other questions? Well, I just want to give you a heartfelt thank you, Laura. That was
Another one just came up.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, Beth just said my
It's
2
not really a
cents.
question. It's just my comments.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Laura can't read it because of her phone.
Oh, yeah.
But Beth made a comment, just her 2 cents worth. She gets the feeling that there's a difference of opinion on management of these horses. And of these wild horses. If you actually live in the West versus the East, I think many of out West think the Eastern folks are being sentimental. Same with other species management, i.e. grizzly, wolf, cougars. You feel helpless to influence any of these federal plans and policy. I do too, Laura, or Beth. Yeah. One of the things that I'm going to tell you that we can do is what we're doing right now and what we do with our summits and the education. And Laura is the principal and she's education. This is all we can do. But Laura, do you have any comment on that?
I think getting involved locally is really important, and that was my story. So when I went out and got my own Mustang, I took his DNA so I could learn who he was, and then from there everything else blossomed. And so from there, each person, according to their talents, can do something. Mine was making the film and showing it to the community. And so, I just want to invite the community to learn who these San Juan Basin horses are. And what we have learned is they're not just turned out horses.
And also labeling them Iberian is very important with the genetics as well. And knowing that these horses are linked to those Andalusians and Lusitanos that we value so much. And it gives them a pedigree where they didn't have before. So that's why our work at the Alliance is so important to us.
There's a lot of compassion in that statement. But I wanted to
that's really well said.
I wanted to know also now that you have horses on this island that you were talking about, Lisa, that's been there for 400 years. There's a couple of hundred horses there, but the island's not that big as the plains out there in the west. So is that the issue? Because for 400 years these horses have taken care of themselves. It's because the area is not that big, they don't overpopulate it, whereas out in the plains it's so big they can overpopulate it. Is that an issue? I mean, you put a goldfish in a little bowl and it stays little. You put it in a big tank and it gets big. So I'm just kind of curious. Right. Or am I just, I don't know. I just wanted to ask that question.
No,
well, they're wanting those rare earth minerals now.
Yeah. Bruce, I put you up a link for the Sable Island horses.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yep. I'll look at that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta drop in a little minute here.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for attending. Laura, thanks again for your wonderful talk. And join the Alliance. This is what this is all really about. Giving community and value to these horses, as well as the ones that we have in our own stables. So thanks again, and good night, everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Did you have
Thanks,
anything
Laura.
to
Thank you
close
very
with?
much. Thank you.
Did you have anything to close with, Laura? Or you're good?
I just think that it's very important that we have this alliance together and that we share information and share the importance of each of our regional horses, because they are special in each region in their own different way.
Agreed.
Thank you, Laura.
I guess I'll conclude. I'll conclude with one thing. I'll conclude with who knows what science will uncover in these Mustangs. And that's why we need to make sure that we preserve them, since to 2020, you know, things have just exploded in the form of DNA knowledge. And so thank you.
Thanks for all your work, Laura.